Caregiving can sometimes feel like an impossible struggle. Caregivers may be torn between taking care of loved ones and trying to maintain balance in life. The good news is that it doesn't have to be that way. The Caring Generation with host Pamela D Wilson is here to focus on the conversation of caring. You're not alone. In fact, you're in exactly the right place to share stories and learn tips and resources to help you and your loved ones. So now, please welcome the host of The Caring Generation, Pamela D Wilson.
This is Pamela D Wilson, caregiving expert, speaker, consultant, and guardian of the Caring Generation. The Caring Generation focuses on the conversation of caring, giving us permission to talk about aging, the challenges of caregiving, and everything in between. It's no surprise that needing care or becoming a caregiver changes everything. The Caring Generation is here to guide you along the journey, to let you know that you're not alone. You are in exactly the right place to share stories, learn about caregiving programs and resources to help you and your loved ones plan for what's ahead. Invite your aging parents, spouses, family, friends, colleagues at work, everyone you know, to listen to the show. If you have a question or an idea for a future program, share your idea with me by responding to my social media posts on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Today we are talking about failing as a family caregiver. Failing as a family caregiver is a complicated subject because the idea of failing at a job you felt pressured to accept may seem unusual, unfair, or uncomfortable. Many family caregivers tell me that they had no choice but to become caregivers for an aging parent or a spouse. There was no one else, no brothers, sisters, or other family members who offered to help. The word fails, or the idea of failure, brings up a lot of negative emotions, especially if you feel that you have failed in one part of life or another. Maybe you applied and didn't get the job you wanted, didn't get the guy or girl you fell in love with, or weren't chosen to be on a team. Many events in life can make us feel like we could or should have done better, and we may have regrets. The difference between failing as a family caregiver and failing in other parts of life is that we more often relate failure to something we want instead of something we don't want. If we're being honest, most people don't add the title or the role of a caregiver to the top of their bucket list. I doubt that being a family caregiver is number one on your list of New Year's resolutions year after year. Becoming a family caregiver is something that most of us do eventually in one way or another. Whether we have children, yes, parents are caregivers, or whether we care for other people in our family. When you care for an elderly parent or a spouse who has physical difficulty getting around, many health issues, or maybe memory loss, a lot of challenges can arise. Let's talk about 8 common caregiving problems that result in family caregivers feeling like a failure. Number 1 is physical health concerns. These health concerns usually belong to an elderly parent, a spouse, or the person the caregiver takes care of. But eventually, due to the stress of the caregiver's many roles, it's the caregiver who also experiences health problems. Diagnoses like high blood pressure, generally not feeling well, having frequent colds, or other minor health annoyances result from physical and mental exhaustion. Caregivers are always doing something. How many of you dream of taking a nap or going for a walk, but that list of all the things you have to do somehow seems more important than taking care of yourself? Caregiving becomes unbalanced when caregivers fail to take time for yourselves because there's so much to do and not enough time to get it all done. This is where failing as a family caregiver begins. Family caregivers who feel that they have to do it all rarely think about asking for help or finding help. So, you start doing X or Y, and then you add A, B, and C, and all of a sudden, you have an entire alphabet list of 26 things you have to do. But what if instead of this list of things you feel you must do, you think about the other variety of aspects that contribute to failing as a family caregiver? How many of you are weary or exhausted? Feeling exhausted might mean that you fail to get enough sleep, eat right, make time for yourself, exercise to have more energy. Failure doesn't have to be this big, colossal, life-changing event. It can be small things that we don't pay attention to. It can be as simple as realizing that something isn't right or it's a little bit off. Caregivers should look at how actions contribute to sleep problems, a weakened immune system, or having new health issues that weren't there before. What about feeling more stressed and irritable or impatient with loved ones and everyone in your life? All of these are warning signs that systems of the body are running down or that your emotions are becoming unbalanced. Let's translate these concerns to aging parents and spouses. As a family caregiver, you may feel guilty or responsible for your loved one not feeling well. Bottom line, you didn't create the health problems that exist. While many caregivers dream of fixing problems or the day-to-day struggles of aging parents or spouse, a mom previously diagnosed with high blood pressure has a heart attack and now feels tired all the time. Mom can't be as physically active as before the heart attack and generally doesn't feel well. As mom's caregiver, you didn't create this problem, although you may be affected by her health issues because you are the caregiver. While you might feel like you have to bear responsibility for the result of other people's actions, that's not your job. If you feel that you are failing as a family caregiver, ask yourself why you feel responsible for other people's problems or feel responsible for making other people happy, but not yourself. There's a big difference between being a caregiver and a caretaker. For more on the topic of caretaking, including research about codependent relationships, listen to the Caring Generation podcast, episode 93. It's called When You Can No Longer Care for Elderly Parents. One of the best ways to avoid failing as a family caregiver is to set boundaries early in caregiving relationships. While you may be committed and feel responsible for caring for dad, mom, grandma, grandpa, or a spouse, feelings of duty can go too far when you take on everyone else's work. Many caregivers do this. Owning actions and behaviors is each of our responsibilities. For example, your mom who had the heart attack may have had high blood pressure for years. Maybe the doctor told mom to quit smoking, exercise, lose weight, eat healthier. And mom decided that all of these suggestions were too much work. So she ignored the doctor's advice. As a result, today your mom's life is negatively affected by health concerns. This doesn't mean that as caregivers, we cannot feel compassion and empathy for the situation of elderly parents. But it does mean that we should not feel like we have failed when the health issues of parents and loved ones worsen. People who receive care can also feel like they've failed or regret not participating in healthy habits or listening to the recommendations of a doctor. One of the hard truths is that changes in health will happen for various reasons. some explainable and some not. At some point, all of our bodies will fail and we will die. A loved one's health getting worse is not due to intentional harmful acts by most caregivers. Health problems do get worse over time. To avoid feelings of failing as a family caregiver, caregivers and the person who needs care must accept responsibility for what they're willing to do and for what they have done. Some health conditions can be maintained for quite some time if actions are taken to halt the declines. Watching a parent suffer can be a red flag warning for adult children who are caregivers to take your health more seriously so that you don't experience similar issues. Number 2 for failing as a family caregiver is experiencing ongoing changes in emotions or mood. One moment you're happy, the next you are sad. Caregivers and care receivers often experience isolation, depression, anxiety, guilt, sadness, worry, irritability, frustration, anger, and grief. When caregivers trade parts of their lives to care for elderly parents or a spouse, something, work, relationships, social lives, suffer. As a caregiver, focusing or shifting your time from one part of your life to another means you are giving up something. This change of focus from something previously important to you may make you feel like you are failing as a family caregiver. You may feel abandoned and alone if you are the person doing it all. Feeling alone may mean that you feel as if you are failing at your career, not paying enough attention to your marriage, losing friends, or your children may be having difficulty in school because you're not available to help them. Caregivers experiencing all of these emotions can get stuck because of de-emphasizing their personal needs in favor of the needs of aging parents or a spouse. While a shift in focus is sometimes necessary for a period of time, setting a boundary to define the length of time you are willing to make trade-offs allows you as the caregiver to plan to reset your life and your priorities. Number 3 for failing as a family caregiver might relate to parents or spouses diagnosed with memory loss, but who may have shown telltale signs for years. If you are a child who lives hundreds or thousands of miles away from a parent and you don't see them frequently, it may not be or may not have been possible to notice memory gaps. On the other hand, you may be an adult child who hears mom or dad complain about the other who has memory loss. You live 1,000 miles away and you brush off the concerns, thinking that your parent just wants to complain. Then you visit and are shocked to see how bad the day-to-day situation is. Then you might feel like you failed to be a support for your healthy parent, who is that primary caregiver for your mom or dad with dementia or Alzheimer's. If this is your situation, accept it and be proactive in creating a plan for what happens when your parent with memory loss or any health concern needs more help. Or, even more importantly, what happens when your healthy parent, when their health fails and they need care? What then? On this topic, you can check out my online video course, Stay at Home, Becoming a Caregiver, How to Support Aging Parents and Maintain Your Sanity. My course takes you through the A to Z of caring for loved ones, included managing complicated family relationships and navigating the healthcare system. Number 4 for failing as a family caregiver is the other outside stressors that I briefly mentioned. Work-related stress related to the idea of reducing work hours, turning down promotions, the financial effects of paying for the care of aging parents on your life, your future, your family, and your retirement. What about paying less attention to family relationships, friendships, or your health? One or all of these can survive a temporary break, but if put on the bottom burner for a long time, the feeling of failing as a family caregiver may be the result. Number 5 for failing as a family caregiver are interfamily issues. A parent may disagree about steps needed for their daily care or about care for a sick spouse. If you are an adult child, you may feel frustrated about a parent being in denial or refusing care. Complicated relationships with parents can make you feel like you are failing as a family caregiver. Remember, it's not your responsibility to solve problems that others create if they are of sound mind and don't have a diagnosis of dementia or Alzheimer's. However, if memory loss is an issue, it's my opinion that sons, daughters, or spouses must intervene. In these cases, you can avoid failing as a family caregiver by insisting a parent sees a doctor for a diagnosis, or that long before cognitive issues might happen, that parents complete their legal planning to appoint an agent to make medical and financial decisions, and you have discussions about caregiving, what your parents want for care, what they don't want for care in the family. Add to all of this craziness disagreements with siblings that can interfere with the primary caregiver, who may be you, doing your job. Your brothers or sisters might disagree with your actions or constantly tell you what to do, even though they have no intention of stepping in to help you. It's okay to set boundaries with unhelpful family members to avoid feeling like you are failing as a caregiver. More on this topic after a short break. Pay it forward to help others dealing with health, aging, or caregiving issues by sharing information about this show and my website, PamelaDWilson.com. The Caring Generation is available worldwide on your favorite podcast and music apps: Apple, Google, iHeartRadio, JioSaavn, Spreaker, Amazon Music, Breaker, Deezer, Listen Notes, Pandora, Player FM, Pocket Cast, Podcast Addict, Podchaser, Stitcher, Spotify, TuneIn, and Verbal. You don't have to go it alone. Caregiving doesn't have to be a do-it-yourself job. Visit my website, PamelaDWilson.com, to schedule a one-to-one telephone or video consultation with me. Click on How I Help, then Family Caregivers, and then Eldercare Consultation. This is Pamela D. Wilson on The Caring Generation. Stay with me. I'll be right back. This is Pamela D. Wilson, caregiving expert, author, and speaker on The Caring Generation. Thank you for following and communicating with me on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and my YouTube channel, where there are hundreds of videos. The questions you ask allow me to create videos and the Caring Generation podcasts for you. Visit my website and follow the show on your favorite music or podcast apps to listen to over 130 episodes. Before the break, we were talking about interfamily issues. If you are a caregiver who is an only child, you might wish that you had siblings to help you. On the other hand, if you are the primary caregiver in a family of problem relatives who seem to cause you more problems than offer solutions, you may feel equally alone. Emotional challenges relating to family relationships and care situations can take on a life of their own, especially if the primary caregiver feels like no support is available and that, as a caregiver, you are struggling day after day. I recommend finding a support group online or in person that is a good fit for you. While not all caregiver problems can be solved in the blink of an eye, sometimes just knowing that others are going through a similar situation can make you feel less isolated or alone. And you might be surprised to meet other caregivers who are having similar experiences. Number 6 for failing as a family caregiver is finding the proper support, resources, and services to help the caregiver and the person needing care. Caregivers who feel supported can manage the ups and downs that result from taking care of sick parents or a spouse more easily. There are many services available in the community, some at no charge. Others are reimbursed by health insurance, and many are privately paid. Learning to navigate the healthcare system means doctors, hospitals, nursing homes, home health care, private caregivers, hospice, insurance companies, and more. Then there is the idea of housing, which means where a parent lives. So your parent's home, maybe an apartment or a low-income community. What about independent living, assisted living, a memory care community, or a nursing home? There is a lot to learn. Many caregivers struggle to find time to investigate available services or know what help they would like to have, but aren't sure how to find the service. Following this line of thought, number 7 for feeling like you are failing as a family caregiver is making care decisions. Deciding about the care of aging parents or a spouse can result in asking questions like, how do I know when it's time to hire an in-home caregiver? Or time to move a parent into a care community? Or time to talk to a doctor about X, Y, or Z? When it's time for palliative or hospice care? Making care decisions can be complicated when you don't have all of the facts, or maybe you have the facts, but you can't make heads or tails of the information you have in front of you. Or maybe you don't even have time to investigate information. If you are undecided or feeling overwhelmed, this may be time to consult a specialist in the area you're struggling. If so, go to my website where you can learn about making an appointment for a telephone or video consultation with me. I help with many care decisions that families face. In other situations, you may need to speak with an elder law, probate, or estate planning attorney, or a CPA. If the issue is health-related, then a specialist you may not realize exists. For example, a cardiologist for heart issues, an endocrinologist for diabetes, thyroid, or other conditions. There are many healthcare specialists. Many older adults, though, see the same doctor that they have seen year after year. The difference is that when people reach the age of 55 or 60, different medical issues happen. Then a geriatrician or an internal medicine physician may be a better choice. This really isn't any different than having a baby or a child see a pediatrician. As the body ages, new age-related conditions occur. Our eyesight gets worse. Our hearing may get worse. Our memory may fail. And it's true, not all doctors have the patience or compassion for older adults, especially when a person has complicated health situations or memory loss. Not feeling like you are failing as a family caregiver means setting yourself and your loved ones up for success. Instead of thinking or feeling like you are failing at everything, focus on the positives and what changes may be necessary to make care situations easier instead of more difficult. While some of these changes may seem like more work, they can be time-saving and stress-relieving. One example is hiring an in-home caregiver. While I know that some of you are saying, oh, my mom or dad will refuse, they just won't do it, or we don't have any money to hire anyone, there are ways around all of these objections. It's all in learning how to present the situation and discuss options within the family, including understanding the consequences of not making choices or any changes. As we talked about in the earlier example of a parent refusing medical advice and then having a heart attack and more problems getting around day to day, what do you think might have happened if the physician said something like this? Doris, you have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and some other concerning health issues. I'd like you to stay as healthy and able as possible. Unfortunately, the medications I'm prescribing can only do so much. If you continue to smoke cigarettes, not exercise, eat junk food, and remain overweight, there is a likelihood that you will have a heart attack or a stroke. Having a heart attack or a stroke can mean that one of these events can result in you not being able to live by yourself. You may need care from your spouse or your children. Depending on the effects of the heart attack or stroke, you may not be able to walk or do a lot of the things you do today. You may have to stop driving a car because of physical weakness, or you may even experience memory loss that leads to dementia. And while I realize that these things may seem like they will never happen, they can. Many people living in nursing homes today thought the same about their health conditions. Taking action to prevent a heart attack or a stroke is better than experiencing this type of event. Doris, are you willing to consider any of my recommendations? Or do you want to take the risk that nothing will happen? In some cases, I know these conversations fall on deaf ears, especially if the person receiving the explanation has never seen anyone who is sick or who had a health and life-changing experience. They may not ever believe that it can happen to them, but one day that health problem, will happen to all of us to some degree. But we have more control over our future health than we think if we are proactive rather than reacting after something else happens. Number 8 on failing as a family caregiver is learning how to advocate for care. Many older adults and their caregivers give up when getting care from a doctor's office becomes difficult, or when insurance companies decline prescriptions or treatments. While these may seem like brutal battles to fight, remember that you have to care more than anyone else and do more than anyone else to get the care you want and need. No one else can do this for you. Also, understand that there are processes, rules, or regulations that are not easy to understand by consumers, by the average person. For an example of this, listen to the Caring Generation podcast, episode 14. What is assisted living? On this program, I talk about legislation requiring the disclosure of financial relationships between assisted living communities and referral agencies. It is essential to understand the financial relationships that organizations in the healthcare industry have in place so that you can protect yourself. Many of these relationships are not clearly disclosed. Simply by signing a consent form, you may be agreeing to services you don't understand. It's always better to ask. My suggestion to everyone, regardless of your age or the state of your health, is to learn about health prevention so that you can be healthier in later years, so that you can plan early for aging and retirement, especially answering that question of how will you pay for care? Who will care for you? Where will you live? If you do this, the likelihood of feeling like you are failing as a family caregiver or failing like an individual with health problems will be lessened. Education and knowledge are essential to advocate for yourself and loved ones. Listeners, I thank you so much for joining me for this program. If you want to share your story or have a request for a podcast topic, video, or article, visit my website, PamelaDWilson.com, and go to the Contact Me drop-down in the top navigation bar. Then click on Caregiver Survey and complete the information. Please share the Caring Generation and my website with everyone you know who is interested in proven, reliable tips, information, resources, and research about caregiving, aging, health, and everything in between. This is Pamela D Wilson, caregiving expert, advocate, and speaker. I look forward to being with you again soon. God bless you all. Sending love to everyone. Sleep well tonight. Have a fabulous day tomorrow and a great week until we are here together again.
Tune in each week for the Caring Generation with host Pamela D Wilson. Come join the conversation and see how Pamela can provide solutions and peace of mind for everyone. Here on Pamela D Wilson's The Caring Generation.